Oh boy, I hope I get to come back someday. Listen, people, we are always constantly being shaped within our culture, trying to help us decide who we are as sexual beings. When you listen to those voices, you will begin to bend towards them. Now, last time I was here, I talked about identity a little bit, and I thought it'd be interesting to kind of bounce off those again in terms of sexual identity. Quickly here, let me run through 3 ways that culture is trying to tell you who you are sexually. The first one comes with this: you are what you do. We live in such a performance-oriented world, and it really infiltrates our sexuality. We find our self-esteem sexually based so often by what we do. I just went to the store and picked up some magazines that I think would really exemplify this. I mean, check this out. Cosmo magazine, front cover, right? Popular magazine. Sex shockers, things he thinks about during the deed that you really, really need to know. It's about your performance. As well, we have naughty sex tricks. Let out your inner bad girl. We also have this one here. This is Men's Health this week, and Lose Your Gut. That's what I'm going to read later. But we also have, I think I'm finally beating anorexia. Can you tell? Anyway, we also have here 1,093 sexy women confess what they want in bed. It's about performance. As a matter of fact, I just borrowed this from Bruxy's office today. And, oh, here's your renewal slip, Brux. The sexiest bodies in Hollywood. Yes, they sweat. And so it tells you how to have a body like in Hollywood. You know, so oftentimes these issues really bend us towards this performance thing. Now, here's part of the problem, people. When you go beyond that towards pornography, one thing I've learned is that pornography really enhances the chasm between our reality and what our expectations are. So oftentimes we become, either our self-esteem becomes less because we can't perform up to what we think the standard is, or we become more and more disillusioned with our partner because of it. So whereas pornography kind of expands that chasm, oftentimes in church culture, the other problem happens is they minimize it. They minimize the importance of sexuality. They minimize the importance of a healthy sexual relationship. Or they make it so legalistic that the boundaries on your behavior are so limited, it just gets downright boring. And so I am so proud of you guys at the meeting house. I mean, you were tackling something head on with honesty, with courage that most churches aren't willing to do on a Sunday. And so I just want to let you guys know that it's an honor to be here because you're trying to dialogue through many of these things. Now, not only does our culture try to tell us, your sexual identity comes from what you do, but also what you have. Right? And even when I say that, what you have, many of you have an image in your head right now of what you're supposed to have. And many of us are lacking in certain areas. But, this really started even in the film industry. Back when we had silent films in the 1910s and 20s, before language was a barrier, we began to identify with certain people as their image. Not as their story, not as their language, but what they look like. And so we began to develop images that we felt compelled to live up to. So certain sex symbols early on had certain body types that then became the standard for us. And so, you can look at Rudolph Valentino as an early male, or, Clark Gable, or, we go through history, Marilyn Monroe probably was really what launched the whole sex symbol thing for many of you. But, we're a little later in that now, right? Think about some of the sex symbols that you grew up with. The posters you had above your bed, right? How many, just yell out some that are in today's world or that you had. What are some? Madonna, right? Donny Osmond. Yeah, I still got his poster. You guys in the remote sites, I can hear you. You're yelling well. How many of you had Farrah Fawcett, right? Or you wanted it, your mom said no, but right? I mean, so we have these things oftentimes, what you have, this is amazing to me, people. In LA County where I live, in my city alone, about the size, a little bigger maybe than Burlington, there are right now 3 full-size billboards on the roadside advertising breast enlargement from plastic surgeons. I live in the land of many plastic people. And so, this idea that this is what needs to happen in your life if you are what you have. Okay, now I'm not saying that there aren't situations that isn't actually a benefit. I'm just saying that many times we perpetuate these myths. Here's another one. You are what people say about you sexually. Many times comments people make really shape how we feel about ourselves. If somebody walks up to you and they say, "Hey, you've been losing weight," don't you just feel better about yourself? They say, "Are you pregnant?" And you go, "No." Do you feel good about yourself today? Especially if they say that to me, right? But it goes even further than that. I mean, how many people have I met in my life who have wrestled with their orientation, and somebody, a coach or teacher said, "Well, it's just because you're gay." And then they buy it. It becomes their reality. So many people that wrestle with some sexually deviant behaviors, and they find a group of people that say, "No, it's okay. As long as you do it in the privacy of your bedroom, what's it matter to anybody else?" And they buy it, and it becomes their reality. The internet is just incredible in this regard of developing communities of people who will reinforce what you need to hear. And so you get on chat rooms and dialogues, and people are all sharing stories and swapping pictures of whatever their deviant behavior is, and all of a sudden you begin to legitimize something that may not be healthy. And so what I find over and over again is if we are not walking towards what God has for us, we will drift towards what the culture offers. We will become the kind of people that maybe we weren't created to become. Because listen, folks, it goes this way. The devil will always take you further than you want to go, make you stay longer than you intended to stay, and then ask you to pay a price you can't possibly pay. And so this is where we need to find our orientation again. We need to understand that Jesus invites us to live from this whole new reality. And it's not just about behaving properly. It's about living in wholeness and freedom. It's always been his story. He takes people like you and I, and he takes communities of people like ours, and he moves them from bondage to freedom to promise. And so I invite you to understand that God invites you to move forward, not live from the backward, not try to avoid things, but to actually step into wholeness in your life. And to do that, we've got to get control of something. Sigmund Freud, the famous psychosexual analyst, had this quote: "Your most powerful sexual organ lies right between your ears." That is where the battle starts, people. That is where you will find freedom in your life. It begins in your mind. Now, hear me here. I'm not talking about just getting smarter, okay? I am talking about a new way of thinking. See, our minds are so powerful. Whether you believe truth or a lie, it oftentimes, it does. It becomes our reality, doesn't it? Like, a number of years ago, I had this clinical case study of a guy who had a muffler fetish, right? A fetish is you can only become sexual aroused with certain objects. Many times we think about that like with leather fetishes or things like, lace fetish, stuff like that. This guy had a muffler fetish. He shows up in a hospital every once in a while. He's got burns on his head, on his hands, and they can't figure out what's going on after week. Finally, we get to talk to him, and sure enough, the guy gets underneath cars. Sometimes he finds a really attractive muffler, slides underneath the car, but the problem is the person just pulled up. It's still hot. He burns himself. Bizarre. His mind had created a reality. Where did it come from? Growing up as a child, his uncle worked as a mechanic. Used to take him as a young boy, slide him on those little slider cars underneath the car. His uncle then would invite women in to look at the engine of the car. The boy would slide out just underneath so he could look up her skirt. He began to associate the underside of a car with sexual arousal. Pretty soon he didn't need the female present. He just had to think about the underside of a car. Mufflers, for some reason, were the part that he was thinking of. Do you understand that? This is the power of our minds. And listen, let me tell you something even worse. Even worse than that.